Imagine this: in the middle of a fierce battle, a young knight suddenly faces a storm so violent that it feels like the heavens have opened up to punish him. Hailstones the size of fists rain down, tearing through tents, killing horses, and freezing soldiers to the bone. In just half an hour, the once proud army is left in shambles, and the leader, King Edward III of England, is forced to reconsider his entire campaign against France. This is not a scene from a fantasy novel, but a real event that happened on Black Monday, April 13, 1360. This storm marked a turning point in the 100 Years' War, a conflict that would drag on for over a century and change the face of Europe forever. The 100 Years' War began in 1337, when King Edward III of England claimed the throne of France, asserting that he had a better right to it than the current French king, Philip VI. The war was not a continuous fight, but a series of battles and truces that lasted until 1453. One of the most significant events in the early years of the war was the Battle of Poitiers in 1356, where the English, led by Edward's son, the Black Prince, captured the French king, John II. This victory gave the English a significant advantage, and they used it to demand enormous concessions from the French. After the capture of King John, the English continued their campaign, hoping to force the French into a decisive battle that would end the war in their favor. In April 1360, Edward's army surrounded Paris, but the Dauphin of France, Charles, who would later become King Charles V, refused to engage in open battle. Instead, he relied on the improved fortifications of the city to keep the English at bay. The English burned and killed outside the walls, hoping to provoke a response, but the French remained steadfast. After a week of futile attempts, Edward decided to move his army to Chartres, a strategic town in central France. As the English army camped near Chartres, a violent storm struck, causing widespread destruction and death. This event, known as Black Monday, was seen as a divine warning. It forced Edward to reconsider his strategy and opened the door for peace negotiations. The Treaty of Brétigny, signed on May 8, 1360, was the result of these negotiations. The treaty marked a significant moment in the war, as it seemed to bring an end to the conflict that had ravaged both countries for over 2 decades. The Treaty of Brétigny was a complex document that covered a wide range of legal and territorial issues. It essentially returned to the terms agreed upon in 1358, before Edward had raised his demands. King John's ransom was set at 3 million gold écus, and Edward agreed to renounce his claim to the French throne. In return, the English were granted control over large territories in France, including Guienne and Calais, which represented about a third of the French kingdom. The treaty also included provisions for the release of King John and the payment of his ransom, which was to be made in installments. To ensure that the terms of the treaty were followed, a group of 40 high-ranking French hostages, including members of the royal family and other prominent nobles, were taken to England. One of these hostages was Guienne and Calais, a powerful lord whose stronghold in northern France was a center of resistance against the English. The inclusion of such important figures as hostages was intended to guarantee that the peace would be kept. The Treaty of Brétigny, however, did not bring a lasting peace. The financial burden of raising the ransom for King John was enormous, and the French had to resort to extreme measures to gather the necessary funds. They levied taxes, sold off assets, and even invited Jews back into the country to contribute to the effort. Despite these efforts, the ransom was not fully paid, and the peace remained fragile. One of the most significant events during this period was the marriage of King John's daughter, Isabel, to the young son of Galeazzo Visconti, the ruler of Milan. The marriage was arranged to secure a large sum of money, which was desperately needed to pay the ransom. The wedding, held in Milan in 1360, was a lavish affair, but it was seen by many as a humiliation for France, as the country was forced to sell its own princess to an Italian tyrant. The Treaty of Brétigny also had unintended consequences. The peace agreement led to the disbandment of many English soldiers, who formed mercenary groups known as the Companies. These groups continued to ravage France, causing further suffering and instability. The Companies became a significant problem, and their activities prolonged the war, despite the treaty's intentions. The return of King John to France in 1360 was a moment of hope, but it was short-lived. The French people were still suffering from the effects of the war, and the country was in a state of financial distress. King John's return did not bring the stability and peace that many had hoped for, and the conflict would continue for many more years. One of the key figures to emerge during this period was Guienne and Calais. He was not only a hostage, but also a prominent nobleman. Guienne's life was a testament to the complexities of the period. He was a skilled warrior, a talented dancer, and a charming courtier, all of which made him a valuable asset to both the English and French courts. His journey from a French hostage to a son-in-law of the King of England highlights the fluid and often unpredictable nature of medieval politics. The 100 Years' War was not just a series of battles, but a complex web of political, social, and economic factors that shaped the course of history. The Treaty of Brétigny, while a significant moment, was just one of many turning points in the conflict. The war would continue for another century, with periods of intense fighting and truces that brought only temporary relief. In the end, the 100 Years' War was a defining period in European history. It changed the balance of power between England and France, reshaped the political landscape, and left a lasting impact on the culture and society of both countries. The storm on Black Monday, the Treaty of Brétigny, and the subsequent events serve as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of war and the complexities of medieval politics. They also highlight the resilience and adaptability of the people who lived through these turbulent times.